Our next segment is entitled In the Eye of a Patrol Officer. So these are going to be real life experiences from the actual voice of a Huntsville police officer. So we picked two of our very finest. I've had the pleasure of working third shift with both of them. And so first up we have Officer Tim Evans, and then I'll let him introduce his colleague.
Thank you, Captain Malone. I want to thank everyone for being here today. Thank you to the administration for allowing me to come and speak to you. Thank you to the mayor, to the city schools for allowing us to come here. It's really an honor. Just as a side note, I am a FTO. I've been a training officer here for about 20 years roughly. I trained Officer Steve Graham. He's not acting. Just to let y'all know that's really who he is. No, I'm just kidding. He's a really, really good officer. We're glad to have him. Glad that I got to train him. A little bit about myself. My name is Officer Tim Evans. I am an officer here. I started in 1991, almost 25-year officer. I'm the first third-generation police officer to work at Huntsville Police. My grandfather retired from here. My father retired from here. I will soon retire from here. My wife, she is also a Huntsville police officer. She will be retiring very soon. We're expecting a grandchild, so that sealed her fate. She's retiring soon. As a matter of personal honor, my son is a Huntsville firefighter, and my son-in-law is currently in the FTO phase. He just graduated this last Huntsville Police Academy. So when I say my life is dedicated to the city, I have a lot of years dedicated to this city and enjoy this city and want to see it prosper and be everything that it can be. And it's really an enjoyment to work and patrol this city, because this city is really a very safe city. I'm always complimented on how safe this city is from people that come from outside. It really makes me feel good to know that our city is looked on as one of the best cities. Captain McMurray allows me to work a part-time job at the airport, and I get to speak to people coming in from out of states that come through, and they want to stop and talk and tell me how nice this city is, how well they enjoy being in this city. And several that have retired have moved back to this city just to live here because of how well this city is run, how well it's maintained. I was asked to come and speak to you about being in the eyes of a patrol officer. And through 25 years of service with this police department, I've worked various different areas of the department and dealt with different things, different aspects. I've worked in the DUI unit. I've worked third shift patrol, second shift patrol, first shift patrol. When you deal with people from the eyes of an officer, you've kind of seen the scenarios of things that I could be encountered with at any day. So if I come up and talk to you, and we've already touched on it a little bit, I don't want you to think that I'm coming across as being a bold or brash or anything of that nature. At the end of the day, as we've talked about, my job and every other officer's job here is to go home to our family. We have a family that we want to go home to, and we are taught certain things in an 18-week academy and then through the 14 weeks of training phases of the way to handle situations that will hopefully result in us getting to go home at the end of our tour. With that in mind, there are certain circumstances, as we've seen in these scenarios, that us as officers have to accept the fact if there's a person in this city that is mentally ill enough that they decide today's the day they're going to take out or shoot a police officer, as you've seen in these scenarios, when you walk up to the car, you really are at a great disadvantage and hope that the good Lord's looking out for you, because it could be your day to die. And I tell the people that I train, if you're under an ambush, chances are today's your day to die. You've got to do everything that you're taught and everything you're trained in order to be able to survive that type of confrontation. So when we stop people, I want to see your hands. I want to see what you're doing. I want to see your movement. I want to control everything, because if I can control it, then I can control what's going on. Being raised in a church-type environment, you always learn to treat others as you would want to be treated, and that's perfect, but I've had to alter that over the years through police work, and I often tell the trainees that I'm training to treat people the way they want to be treated. And that meaning, if I come up to your car and I'm going to start out being as polite as I can, and if you're polite, we have the most polite. It's a good encounter. You can go back and tell everybody, hey, I had a nice encounter with the police. But if you become confrontational, then I have to become confrontational with you and try to steer it get it under control. Because I always have to remind the people that I'm training, we are the ones that have to be in control. If we're not in control, then we don't have anybody in control, and there's mass chaos. Do what we can do to get the situation under control. And in our eyes, that's what we want to do as officers, is we want to be the one that's in control. If we can get the cooperation from the citizens, then everything's in control and everything works out to be to the best advantage for everyone involved. And you have to understand, when an officer talks to you, I'm in the mentality, and it's unfortunate what police work will do to us as officers. It's unfortunate that I have to talk to everybody, and I have to assume that you're lying to me, you want to hurt me, you want to run from me, that you're up to something. And I have to go into every scenario. Are you lying to me? And you're lying to me until I can verify that you're telling me the truth. You want to hurt me until I can verify that you don't. You want to run from me until I can verify that you don't. And that's the unfortunate circumstances that sometimes would cause a bad experience with an officer, or could cause it. It's not that I want to be bad or that I'm trying to be bad. It's that I'm trying to get to the truth and protect the public and protect you and protect myself. That's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to get to. And that's the generic of what, if you have a bad experience, what's going on. The officer is just trying to get to the bottom of what is the problem. And your cooperation is a big key in how that plays out. I think this is the first year we've really done this type of a thing, and I want to commend the people that put it together. I've always been a proponent. Anytime I deal with the public, such as yourselves, I tell people, come and fill out a citizen observer form. Come and ride with an officer on a shift for 8 hours. It will completely change your outlook on what police work is and what we have to see and deal with on a daily basis. That's what I tell people. And then when I talk to those people later on, they come back and they're completely changed as to what's going on. They come back and they tell me, you were right. I didn't know that police work is this. Police work is the most rewarding, fun job that there is, but it's a very thankless job. It's hard to explain how it is to come into work and know that I'll never know if I saved somebody's life by putting a DUI person in jail, a drunk driver in jail. All I can do is think maybe that I did. I'll never know if I arrested this person, did I save somebody's life down the line? I hope that I did. That's what I can hope for. And for the ones that I didn't save, I wonder sometimes at night when I lay down, was there something I could have done different that might have changed that outcome? That's what bothers me the most. This is the first year for this type of event. If it were up to me, I hope within a couple of years we're happening to hold this event at the Civic Center and we can pack out an arena and everybody can come. Because what happens here is you see the scenarios, you get in this type scenery and see what we have to deal with on a daily basis. We need your word of mouth to go out and explain. You needed to see what the police have to go through. I've been there. I've seen what it is. I walked through the scenarios. It's not what you think it is. And with that being said, everybody here has watched the scenarios. I watched them. Do you see, if you were to put yourself as a witness to what happened, can you see where from a long distance away you could see what happened and somebody would say, well, that officer shot somebody for no reason? That's something that we have to battle with too, is when you hear something that may be reported to the media, take a second and think about what's going on, because you're hearing from a witness that was a long way away possibly and may not have all the facts or the details of what was going on. That's what I would hope that you would take from this, is look at every scenario and try to think yourself through it and say, what would I do in that situation? What could have happened? And that's the thing that I really hope that we take from it. I enjoy being a police officer here. I enjoy working for you as the citizens. I get up every day. I've been doing it for 25 years. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's the best job I've ever had. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. I'm going to close with one thing that I've always said, that if I ever had a chance to talk to the people, I wanted to give you an opportunity to listen to it. If you would listen to it and bear with me for just 1 second, it's the late Paul Harvey describing what police work is. If you would just bear with me and listen to it, please.
A policeman is a composite of what all men are, I guess, a mingling of saint and sinner, dust and deity. Called statistics, wave the fan over stinkers, underscore instances of dishonesty and brutality because they are news. What that really means is that they are exceptional, they are unusual, they are not commonplace. Buried under the froth is the fact. And the fact is that less than 0.5% of policemen misfit that uniform. And that is a better average than you'd find among clergymen. What is a policeman? He of all men is at once the most needed and the most wanted, a strangely nameless creature who is sir to his face and pig or worse behind his back. He must be such a diplomat that he can settle differences between individuals so that each will think he won, but if a policeman is neat, he's conceited. If he's careless, he's a bum. If he's pleasant, he's a flirt. If he's not, he's a grouch. He must make instant decisions which would require months for a lawyer, but if he hurries, he's careless. If he's deliberate, he's lazy. He must be first to an accident, infallible with a diagnosis. He must be able to start breathing, stop bleeding, tie splints, and above all, be sure the victim goes home without a limp or expect to be sued. The police officer must know every gun, draw on the run, and hit where it doesn't hurt. He must be able to whip two men twice his size and half his age without damaging his uniform and without being brutal. If you hit him, he's a coward. If he hits you, he's a bully. A policeman must know everything and not tell. He must know where all of the sin is and not partake. The policeman from a single human hair must be able to describe the crime, the weapon, the criminal, and tell you where the criminal is hiding, but if he catches the criminal, he's lucky. If he doesn't, he's a dunce. If he gets promoted, he has political pull. If he doesn't, he's a dullard. The policeman must chase bum leads to a dead end, stake out 10 nights to tag one witness who saw it happen but refuses to remember. He runs files and writes reports until his eyes ache to build a case against some felon who will get dealed out by a shameless Seamus or an honorable who isn't honorable. The policeman must be a minister, a social worker, a diplomat, a tough guy, and a gentleman. And of course he'll have to be a genius because he'll have to feed a family on a policeman's salary.
Whenever I feel not good and don't really want to go to work, I'll listen to that, and it motivates me to come to work. That motivates me to protect the citizens of this community. And once again, it is an honor to me to be an officer working for such a fine city. That'll conclude my part. The second part of this segment, I would like to introduce Officer Justin Beckles. He is a second shift police officer. Thank you.
I first would like to introduce myself. I'm Officer Beckles. I've been with the Huntsville Police Department for 4 years in uniform patrol. I would like to thank my command staff, especially my captain, for allowing me to be a part of this experience and meeting a few of you all today, as well as the CROs for allowing me to be a part of what they're doing. I was also tasked to come up here and talk, and I guess I'll give a couple of scenarios that I've been a part of in my short tour here with the department, and I'll give you let you guys understand just what we're going through and kind of add on to what the scenarios you guys have seen today. On one instance, I was backing up a patrol officer on a traffic stop, and what we would normally consider a routine traffic stop, which us officers know that nothing is routine with our traffic stops. But I backed up the officer, and what most would consider a female, younger female, stopped her for a traffic violation. The officer could not see, but what she did was had a semi-automatic firearm under her console. I immediately notified the officer of the firearm. We removed her from the vehicle, and she was actually a person that was forbidden to carry the firearm. And I guess that scenario brings me to the point of what appears to be something is not necessarily always the case. If you see a dual unit on patrol, a lot of times that's our field trainers. A lot of times we may just be down on vehicles. There may be a scenario where that second officer's pulling up, because when we come out to work here, everybody that puts this uniform on, we're out here for each other, and we're here to protect each other, make sure that he goes home to his family, he makes sure I goes home to my family. The situation in that case, she was able to be taken into custody. We were able to retrieve the firearm, and that day ended well, and we both went home. Second scenario was something that sometimes would involve complacency of an officer. On third shift patrol, I was responding to a loud music call at an apartment complex here in Huntsville, and normally that will be something that they dispatch 2 officers to initially. I got beside myself and advised on the call. It was supposed to be just a loud music call. It turns out that it was a little bit more, and it was a party. I come around the side of a building, and it turns out that a guy has, when I say charge a weapon, he's put a bullet in the chamber on the side of the building, and it's pointing at about 4 or 5 subjects. At that point, I notified my dispatch and other officers and got them en route, and was able to try and come at the guy to prevent him from doing anything to the 4 or 5 subjects. He ducks in between cars, and I hear the weapon rack again. I don't know if he's adding another bullet to the chamber. I don't know what he's doing, but he ducks between the 2 cars. I'm able to finally get him into custody, and other officers start coming on scene. When we go back to retrieve the weapon is no longer there. The weapon was actually picked up by one of the 4 or 5 subjects he was pointed at, which was one of his cousins. I don't have any idea what his mindset was at the time that he would do that and pointed at his own family, but that's what the situation was. Had the situation turned out differently with that subject that picked up the weapon, his family saying that he didn't want his family going to jail that day, could have been turned out a little bit differently for me. That brings up the point of waiting on our backup officers. This is why we sometimes should not advise on calls and sometimes wait for our backup officers to be there. Sometimes some calls seem a little bit low budget, and sometimes our hair rises up a little bit and we know to wait on somebody else to come there. The third situation was very similar to what we have present day in a lot of cases where we get up in arms about younger adults and teenagers and stuff that are being stopped and sometimes shot at by police officers. I responded to a hotel here in Huntsville on University Drive. It was supposed to be an offender that had robbed someone previously, fits the description of a previous robbery offender, and was possibly robbing a second subject here at this hotel. I was very close to the hotel, so I go and put myself en route to the call. I knew my backup wasn't far away, so I went ahead and started clearing due to the nature of that subject possibly having a girl in his custody. Start clearing the building, find a guy that matched the description in the driver's seat of a vehicle, wearing all black. And that was the description given to me by my dispatch. Immediately when I make contact with him, he takes his hands from the dashboard area and starts tucking something under the seat. At that point, I don't know what he's doing, and I start giving him verbal commands to show me his hands, show me his hands. About 4 or 5 times in, I'm telling him to show me his hands. What he was doing was putting a airsoft BB gun that is replicated to be a Colt manufacturer 911 model, but it was an airsoft BB gun. I was very close to having to fire on the subject just because of the nature of what he was doing and would not show me his hands. But this is just another situation that we're given that, we don't know what we do till we get in the situation. Turns out that he was putting a replicated airsoft BB gun under the front seat of the car. We were able to actually take him into custody, and he had a second one inside the vehicle that we were also able to recover, and we were able to make an arrest, and we went home safely that night. I guess I throw all these scenarios out to you guys just to take into the totality that every experience that we have teaches us what to do the next time, and whether that's wait on our backup officers, make sure that we're there to back up our officers, and to make sure that that when we're put in situations of, this replicated firearm, that we don't take a chance on our lives and we go home to our family. Again, I want to thank everybody for coming out here. This is an experience for me. I was able to be out on the scenarios, and I'm also allowed to be here today. I appreciate everyone coming, and like Officer Evans said, please go out to the streets and talk to people and let them know what you've seen, what you've taken away from this experience. I've taken away something, and I hope you guys have too. I also like to thank my family for being here today to support me. I'm a Huntsville native, and it is very paramount to me that I help have this city remain what it was when I grew up here. So with these personal vested interests, like other officers here on the streets, I just want to say thank you for coming.
Community involvement is critical in what we do, and let me tell you why. We're the largest city in the state of Alabama with over 240 square miles right now. I mean, we're larger than Chicago, Detroit. There's not many cities in this country that have the square mileage coverage in 2 counties right now that the city of Huntsville has undertaken. As you notice from the videos, our officers ride by themselves. They're trained to ride by themselves. We have a threat assessment when we get a call. Normally they wait on a backup to arrive so that they can go in together. That can't always take place. It just depends on the scenario. We're very proud of our response time. Central Huntsville usually gets under 2 minutes. You'll have an officer knocking on your door. If it's a critical incident, it's usually under a lot less than that. And the reason is we have a zone defense. Each precinct is broken up into 6 or 7 different zones, and we place officers in each one of those zones all throughout the shift. And so it's through a critical analysis of the calls for service that come out every hour of the day, we know how heavily to staff these officers in your neighborhoods. And so when you get a call, that zone defense goes into effect, and that first officer on the scene will roll up, and he'll get on the radio and tell the next officer arriving what he's got, whether he needs to speed it up or not, and it gets you to the call very quickly. If you see 2 officers riding in a Huntsville police car, it's more than likely somebody like Tim Evans here, who's training a rookie, or Officer Beckles, who's now in a position to start training people. I still call a 4 or 5 year police officer a rookie himself. And you can see why, because you see what the citizens said. I need more experience doing this. You need to do this a lot. The more you do it, you think you get better and better. And so most of us senior officers kind of look at 5 years. If you can survive your first 5 years of mistakes as a patrolman, you might live to retire, because that's when we make a lot of mistakes our first 5 years. Did you notice also how unpredictable every scenario was? We trained to be unpredictable ourselves, and that's why people think police officers are strange. We're kind of weird. We look at people funny. And let me give you the best example, and this just come to me during our break. I went to the men's room back there, and I walked right past the urinals, went back to the back stall, shut the door, and then when I was through, I walked back. You know why I did that? It wasn't because I had to use the stall. It was because these guys in the academy, these senior officers, told me 30 years ago that if you're in uniform, you're in a public restroom, try to always use the stall, because that door will give you 1 second reaction time if somebody walks in and sees a police officer, or if somebody watched you go in there and wants to kill you. And I never knew people wanted to kill police officers or harm us, but these guys, they drill that into you, and after a while, you're always looking for bad guys, it seems like. And so police officers are paranoid, we're a little bit weird, and so we're strange that way. And you saw what happens. Sometimes we walk to the left side of the car, sometimes we walk to the right side of the car. If we pull you over, you don't know what we're going to do. And the reason is, we don't always do the same thing either. We try to be unpredictable. I have about 10 coffee shops I like to get coffee at, and I never go to the same place 2 days in a row. You know, isn't that kind of strange? Don't you go to the same coffee shop every day? I try not to, because I don't want people to pick out my patterns and be waiting on me when I come to the store. But that's how paranoid cops have sometimes. But it's a survival method that we have trained our officers to become mentally prepared at all times for an armed confrontation. And it's a scary world they live in. It really is. And you saw it firsthand today, and I appreciate that. In fact, I'm going to skip over a lot of stuff because that did so much better job than anything I could tell you about. And what these officers have given you testimony to has done great also. So we train our officers to be unpredictable, and yet a lot of things they do is strange. For instance, you'll see a gas station with crime scene tape all the way around it, and you think, well, this guy just robbed him. He got $20 out of the cash register. Why did they tape off this whole block? And now I can't get gas. They've inconvenienced us. Well, the reason is we always tape off the largest crime scene possible. And then when the investigator gets there and looks at the video evidence and tries to determine if maybe that suspect touched anything or dropped anything as he fled the scene, then he brings the crime scene in. And it takes hours of investigation for that crime scene to shrink. And so we protect evidence. That's very critical on crime scenes. So a lot of things we do, it is a science of investigation, but the public doesn't understand why we close down that whole block for 5 hours. You know, it is an inconvenience sometimes, but there is a method to what we do. The police officer walks up to you on the street, and you saw this, and he's talking to you. Maybe you called him about a lost something, or maybe your kid's bicycle was stolen. You'll notice the officers ask you strange questions or looks at you. What they're trained, the first thing an officer will do is look at you and assess you. And you think, why does he have to do that? It's because a lot of the people they're dealing with are either mental patients, or they're drug addicts, or they have problems, either problems with authority, or they had just social problems. And so they're constantly looking at every single person. That we look at their person's pupils, we look to see if their arms are shaking, their fingers, are they steady? What's their lisp? Are they thick-tongued? I mean, little weird stuff like that. They're trained observers, and so we're kind of weird because we're looking for that all the time, and we're trying to make an analysis on just how safe this situation is. But then we go through all of that, and you're wondering, and this is the part I really want to talk to you about, is how do we hold those officers accountable for their behavior? Because they're wondering if they're going to go home. You heard the officers. I want to go home at the end of the night, and I want to treat everybody right, but something's not right here. And when you saw those citizens approach the people in the car, almost every one of them got killed. And that's what we don't want to happen. But we do hold our police officers accountable. In fact, there's over 1,000 written directives and training bulletins that these men and women will learn in the police academy. They will learn those directives, and they are compliant according to city policy and police procedure. They have a sworn oath to the state of Alabama. They uphold Title 32, our motor vehicle titles, which are extensive laws, criminal laws, and of course the Constitution of the United States. And yet, we need to hold them accountable more. We really do. There's a lot goes on the street. We have one of the best video audio recording systems. In fact, it started 22 years ago. We learned that every time we put a drunk driver in jail, well, not every time, but almost every time the drunk driver woke up in the morning in the drunk tank, you know what he complained about? How did I get this bruise on me? And how come there's no money in my wallet? And why do I have this terrible headache? Well, you know, those three things. Every single drunk driver was complaining on our Huntsville police officers. They said we beat them. They said we stole their money. And they gave them this black eye. And our complaints were through the roof. So over 20 years ago, we bought these big VHS cameras and we put them in the front of the cars. And we put the tape recorders in the trunk. You know remember the VHS before they had CDs, the big tapes? We would take those out at the end of the shift and we would take them to court and show the judge. Now the judge is not seeing this man in a suit and tie saying that officer beat me up and he violated my civil rights and he stole my money. He sees this drunk that can't touch his finger with his nose, that's calling a police officer names, and he sees the police officer pull the wallet out and show the camera there's nothing in it when he first got it out. And so the drunk realized that he spent his last dollar on that beer at the bar. That's where his money is. And the reason he's got a black eye is because he insulted a girl at the bar and some guy punched him out. It wasn't the cop after all. And that showed up on the video too. And so and now our video camera, now we have high definition cameras in the cars and we have these little microphones that attach to your belt. And every encounter with a citizen is recorded. And thanks to that, 96% of complaints against our officers are cleared. We invite the complainant to come up and view the video and hear themselves. And you know what the citizen says? I don't remember it like that. And most of them aren't being mean toward officers at all. They were so intimidated that they felt victimized by the police who were trying to do their job. And when they see, maybe I shouldn't have thrown that driver's license at the police officer, maybe I should have been a little nicer, and then they understand that they were the rude party. It wasn't the officer at all. And so we're now going in to 2015, and Mayor Battle and Chief Morris are looking at body cameras now, which it's a supplement to what we do, because as the officer leaves the safety net of that car, he can now be videoed far beyond what that camera can do. So we no longer have to play up to the camera in front of the car. So all these technologies make us accountable. We're highly accountable. We wear the word integrity on the patches on our shoulder for a reason. And this is one of the reasons. We have a very advanced system when it comes to tracking our officers. Each officer has a sergeant. We have about 10 to 15 officers per squad, and that squad has a sergeant. Two squads have a lieutenant. A lieutenant, of course, is over the shift, and he answers to a captain like myself at a precinct. So I have 3 shifts, and I answer to Deputy Chief Giles, and he answers Chief Morris. Now, I know you're asking what happens if we do get involved in a deadly encounter. How do we make that appear to the public? How do we clear that officer? We have what's called a incident review board, and I'm really glad that the Citizen Advisory Panel members came, because they sit in on this as representatives from the community. Each one of our Citizen Advisory Committee members are appointed to that board by different people in the community. The mayor will pick some, the chief gets to pick one, just different members. And they sit in on these personnel hearings. There's not personnel hearing, it's called an incident review board. And the good thing about this is all the evidence is displayed. The district attorney is there, the city attorneys are there, and everybody hears the evidence as to whether or not this was in policy or out of policy. Well, what if it's out of policy? What if maybe there's some question of why that officer took that person's life? Well, the grand jury is another level of citizen involvement. 20 citizens of the city of Huntsville, Madison County, will sit on a grand jury, and the district attorney will take that evidence and give to a grand jury. They will then decide, did that officer use the proper amount of force? So you see where we're at? We're now citizen oversight again. We're going right up the chain, grand jury. If that officer is indicted, he gets another level. He gets to go to court in front of a jury and a judge. And that's where the determination, just like every citizen in Huntsville, we have our day in court. And that's extreme levels of citizen oversight, extreme levels of management that's done. But it's done because of the type of work that you heard these officers tell you they do on a daily basis. So, with that in mind, I just want to close by thanking everyone for showing up. And I assure you that the systems in place in this community hold our officers accountable. One thing we don't do as well as we wish we could do is more of this, and that is talk to you one-on-one. So hopefully I've said enough to spur your curiosity and maybe want to ask a question. And we're going to open it up for questions now. I'm going to turn it back over to Captain Jess Henry Malone, who is our support services captain. He gives us a lot of support, gives us the things we need to run these precincts and to run the administration as well. Even though he hasn't told much about what he does with the department, he has a very critical function in the Huntsville Police Department as well. So I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you so much for being here and for giving me a few minutes to talk to you.
My name is Vicki Guerreri, and I am the past chair of the Huntsville Police Citizens Advisory Council, and I represent District 3, which is South Huntsville. I was appointed by Councilwoman Moon in 2010. Let me give you a brief overview of what the Citizens Advisory Council is. Have any of you in the audience heard of us? Okay. We're trying to get more exposure out in the community. But we were formed by city ordinance 5 years ago on June the 10th, 2010. The council was formed because the mayor, the city council, and the police department had the vision to appoint citizens from each district to serve the police department and residents, and ready to support and assist whenever and however needed. Members of the advisory council, there are 10 of us, and we represent a very culturally diverse cross-section of the community. All of us come from different backgrounds, which is important because we then bring a different perspective or advice or concern or idea to the chief of police and command staff. All of the members have been long-serving community volunteers in numerous organizations throughout the city. Our purpose is to promote productive police and community interaction by assisting the police in achieving a greater understanding of the nature and causes of very complex community problems and the area of citizen relations. In order to provide an effective organization to assist the police department, we had to learn a lot about each other. When most of us were appointed to this council, we had no idea how the police department operates, why they did what they do. We had to be educated. So for several months, bi-weekly, Huntsville Police Department command staff trained us and opened their doors, threw back the curtain, and said, here's why we do what we do. Here's what goes on. So we had a better understanding of how we could assist in helping to establish some new different policies and procedures. Into that, we have helped the police department establish the Citizens Police Academy. We helped the chief with the special ordinance revisions of several years ago. We established or helped the chief establish a policy on increased patrols when a neighborhood is without power, ongoing for 4 hours. We have been involved since January of 2014. We were invited to attend the incident review boards. Now, there has been a lot of talk in the community and across our country in recent months about police brutality, and that citizens do not see the review boards, the incident review boards. They're not part of the process. We are unique here in Huntsville that we do have citizens sitting as not on the actual review board, which consists of a captain, a lieutenant, a sergeant, and a patrol officer. But we are there and we hear all of the evidence. We are encouraged to ask questions. So the citizens of Huntsville have an advantage that there are citizens in that room. And so we were ahead of the ball there for several years now. We are not a complaint department. We have no authority as far as discipline goes toward an officer or things like that. But if a citizen does have a complaint against an officer, and for whatever reason they're afraid to go to internal affairs, because going in and talking to a police officer sometimes can be intimidating to members of the public. And we are very sensitive to that. So we offer to accompany them to internal affairs and to be by their side while they are doing their complaint. We have established many partnerships in the city. We host quarterly public meetings. We are contacted by numerous civic associations throughout the city to speak at their events. And our door is always open if you would like to speak to a member of the council, if you have a concern. We have a table out front with contact information on it. And one of the very first things we did when we were formed, we helped with diversity recruiting and reaching out to, for example, women and other minorities and encouraging them to apply to the police department. And I believe this past class we had seven women graduate as police officers. So it is a field that's opening more. We enjoy what we do. We've learned a lot. We are always ongoing learning things. The chief and command staff have been wonderful to us, and we appreciate them as I'm sure they appreciate us.